Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our webinar of the webinar series in preparation of the DialogSummit, which is going to take place in Frankfurt on May 2nd and May 3rd. And I very much welcome to this first webinar Michael Leander, with whom I'm going to discuss his subject, Fixing Your Data-Driven Marketing. Michael Leander, I'm very glad you're with us. You are keynote speaker, top keynote speaker, you're a trainer concentrating on email and data-driven marketing. It's hard to reach you because most of the time you're abroad, somewhere in Southeast Asia, or I think next week you're in Moscow. And I'm very glad that we have you with us today. You're very busy, very active in the field of email marketing. Right now you have the State of Email Marketing survey running. I will put in the link later on. You are organizing the European Email Award, and with your company Markedo, you're very active in consulting companies. I'm very glad you're with us. Michael, hello.
Hello, thank you very much for having me.
We will just start with the first question, and my first question is, email marketing in many cases is having a list and sending emails to that list. So what do you recommend to companies who want to start data-driven marketing? Those who just have a list, what can they do with respect to data-driven marketing?
I think it's first important to understand what data-driven marketing exactly is, because there's a lot of different definitions out there, and I think a lot of times small and medium-sized businesses in particular, when they hear about data-driven marketing, they think it's like a huge project. So to me, data-driven marketing really is anything that can be more or less automated based on insight you achieve on preceding activities. So for email marketing, what that means, if you're somebody who is just sending out a newsletter or sending out a promotion every once in a while, that could be something as simple as having an automated response to people who didn't respond. So let's say people who didn't open an email or people who didn't click on an email, they would then receive a reminder a few days later. That is a very, very simple form of data-driven marketing. And by the way, a form that actually produces additional results.
Great, fantastic. So activity within the newsletter or the emails which are being sent can be recorded. Many lists consist of people who didn't open or didn't click for a long time. What should we do with these?
That's a very good question, and there are many strategies for that. I think you're right that in most cases we see that any type of list from any type of industry have around 50 to 60% subscribers who have not responded through opening or clicking for, let's say, the past 6 months. And that's an enormous number when we add it up. What I usually recommend is to at least identify who those people are and then split the list into people who have been active in the past 6 months and people who have not been active in the past 6 months. Now, if we focus on the people who have not been active for the past 6 months, there are numerous ways that one can leverage data-driven marketing to find them and to somehow try to get them reactivated. So one way, for example, if we're looking at the consumer side of things, is to leverage Facebook advertising to identify those people and to place advertisements in front of them in order to reactivate them. And the way that works is simply that you get the list of inactives you upload it to Facebook. They have a process for this that's pretty straightforward. And then you run your advertisement with the objective to reactivate them. So that's one strategy.
Why should they react on Facebook if they don't react on email? I mean,
well, because that's a very good question. I think a lot of times what happens when we subscribe to email newsletters, for example, is that at the moment we subscribe, we have a need. Or at the moment we subscribe, there's a promise from the vendor or from the brand which makes us excited. So we want to know more. But over time, we either don't get what we were hoping to get, we might just have a different need, or we might have been accustomed to the content not being relevant. And a lot of people don't unsubscribe for some peculiar reason. So what essentially happens is just fatigue, right? So they stop engaging with those emails. And eventually the brand is out of sight in that inbox. And that's one of the reasons why using platform, I'm not necessarily advocating Facebook, I just know they have this feature, using features such as Facebook to find them and try to re-engage them might be a good idea. But the other way, as you know well, is to simply run a number of activities targeting people who haven't interacted with let's say a newsletter for a period of time, and then eventually simply stop sending to them.
This was my question now. Those who are inactive, we try, of course, other channels like Facebook or like Google Ads or whatsoever to re-engage them. But if they simply don't want, what can we do with the emails? Should we go down in the frequency, or should we go up with the frequency? What do you recommend, or do you have any experience with both of these strategies?
I don't think increasing frequency is going to help. It's definitely a bit of a dangerous strategy because it increases the likeliness. If you're talking specifically about non-active subscribers, it's bound to get the opt-out rate up, which could be a good thing, but even worse, it's also likely to increase the number of spam complaints. And as you know, the number of spam complaints, not scam, but spam complaints, influence your sender reputation score. And if that's influenced in a negative way, then eventually it's going to hurt your deliverability. But what I would do, what I normally recommend as perhaps the best strategy to experiment with, is simply to say we will run a number of emails targeting people who have not been active for a period of time. The purpose of that pretty much is to get them to raise their hand and says, yes, I am still interested, right? So they need to do an active act in which they confirm that they wish to receive information from us in the future as well.
Should we tell them? Should we tell them that we detected their inactivity, or should we avoid giving them the feeling of being monitored?
It's a good question, and I would say that very much depends on the market, right? So if we take Northern Europe, I think people are generally very aware of data privacy and that type of thing. Whereas if you're looking at Southern Europe, Asia Pacific, and South America, for example, people aren't generally very aware of data privacy, and also have much less trust in senders, and senders, let's say, desire to follow whatever legislation is in place. But I would be upfront. I would say, hello, Dr. Schwarz. You haven't been interacting with our content recently, and I'm wondering if that's because we are no longer interesting to you, or if there are other reasons. But in any event, I would like you to reconfirm your subscription to this particular newsletter, and you do that by clicking here, and then take Dr. Schwarz to a landing page that reiterates the value of the proposition that you offered with your newsletter, for example, or the offers that you sent.
Okay.
Now, if Dr. Schwarz doesn't reply to that after having received a couple of reminders, I would take Dr. Schwarz off the list and unsubscribe him.
Okay, before we get me off the list, what are the possibilities to re-engage me? Is it a special offer? Is it a special price? Or what recommendations do you have for companies to re-engage inactive users?
This would depend a little bit on the industry, but I think in general, yes, it can help if you incentivize it. You offer something special, whatever that may be. But bear in mind, our focus here is not just to get somebody to engage. Our focus is to get people who are still relevant to us and who thinks that we are still relevant to them to engage.
Okay.
Because we have no, it's not serving our purpose just to get to sort of buy somebody's re-engagement, and then when we start running the newsletter again and we take the next step 3 months later, and then we find that person is again inactive.
Okay.
So the way I would recommend, again depending on the industry, I would start without incentivizing. At least the first message would be straightforward. We haven't heard from you. We wonder why. If you want to continue to receive, click here. If you do not wish to continue to receive, click here. That kind of thing. But maybe in one of the reminders, you could try to incentivize it. So if you're in the B2B space, you might want to give away some sort of asset, a white paper, an ebook, a special video recording, a special trial version of, if it's software, for example. And in the B2C, you could try with discount coupons, special time-limited offers, and so on. By the way, it's very important that we time limit these activities. There has to be a deadline for somebody to act. And that deadline is not supposed to be 2 weeks ahead. It's like tomorrow. If I don't hear from you within the next 24 hours, for example. But this is a very difficult area, and I think a lot of marketers around the world are struggling with this because we've learned to focus on quantities of lists, right?
Yeah.
So we always want to increase, and it's like it's ingrained in human beings that we want to move forward. If we have 10,000 subscribers, we want to get to 11,000. I'm saying, why don't we look at the quality of the subscribers we have, how interesting they are to us, and how interested how much value we can add to them. Because we know from experience that small lists can actually outperform big lists, right?
Okay.
You have plenty of marketers, I can't give you names, who are sending emails every week to 100,000 people who perform worse than certain brands with 20,000 subscribers, right?
Okay, but you expect that every recipient of an email reads all the emails, because if you send 2 reminders and I did not read both of these reminders, then you will drop me from the list. So how do you think about emails being read? Are they all read, or at least the subject line, or are most of the emails not being seen?
I think most emails are being seen, assuming that they don't land in the spam folder. And even then, it depends on what kind of client. I think people who use Outlook and that type of thing, they have a tendency to check their spam folder relatively frequently, whereas if we're talking about Gmail users, they hardly ever check their spam folder unless somebody asks them to, right? But I think if we look at it from the corporate inboxes, I think most emails are being seen. But I think senders with a high frequency, they sort of teach people a habit. And the habit is, I don't necessarily have to interact with this email today because I know 2 days from now, 1 week from now, I'll receive another email, right? There's no sense of urgency for people who publish newsletters, say media like marketing-BÖRSE and others, right? Because you are very regular with your communication.
Yeah.
So on one hand, I think email is still strong because we do actually see the sender name, which is far the most important of the two, and we see the subject line, right?
Okay. So what do you think about the Gmail folder where all the advertisement goes into? On one hand is a good chance that people go to that folder with the aim of looking at the offers they receive there. But on the other hand, things might get overlooked there.
Most definitely. First of all, we have to keep in mind that not all consumers are structuring their Gmail in this way. Mm. I'm not sure what the numbers are. I seem to recall about a year ago, somebody told me it was only 40% who rolled it out, right? Mm. So that means 60% are still using the one inbox paradigm. But for those who don't, I don't have any research on this, but my intuition tells me that it's rare on a desktop. It's rare that people actually look in the offer folder. Mm. But I think that the game is different on a smartphone. If you think about it, Dr. Schwarz, on a smartphone, I think, again, this is my hunch, I think we take a little bit more time because often we are in situations, whether we're waiting for somebody, we are in public transport, in airports, train stations, wherever that may be, and we feel we have a little bit more time to actually look at what's in our inbox. And also those folders containing offers and such are more visible on a smartphone device.
Yeah, great. It's a great idea. This time-killing usage. Okay.
Yeah, I think so. But other than that, I would say that the same principles apply when we speak about email marketing as it does, I think, really in any type of channel, which is if preference is established. So in other words, if I appreciate receiving information from marketing-BÖRSE, if I in the past have learned something, if marketing-BÖRSE has added value to me, I will give preference to the communication received from marketing-BÖRSE. Mm. It's really as simple as that, because all emails are fighting for the same attention. Mm. And we know attention span has dropped, right?
Yeah, okay.
People are more stressed. People filter away irrelevant information much quicker today than they did just 5 years ago, right? So the decision making about which emails do I spend time on and which not is really, really quick. And for that reason, it's even more important to have strong preference, a strong brand, and a very good track record of providing value to the recipient.
Okay, so now I got it. One question before for the mobile thing. Do you have any numbers of the click rate, opening and click rate on mobile devices between the countries? Because I observe, for example, here in Germany, that the speed, the internet connection, the mobile internet connection is horrible. Because many people are accessing the internet through mobile, and the providers, the telecom providers, are they don't deliver the bandwidth they need to. So people tend not to click on a mobile device. So click rates in Germany are lower than in other countries. This is my observation. Do you have similar observations?
I have two observations, although I don't have all the data. It will be interesting to talk to a bunch of the email marketing service providers to get that data. The observations that I have from Northern Europe, where we are now looking at 4G pretty much with everyone, moving towards 5G, where we don't have any congestion problems to speak of. Well, of course, if you're in a stadium with 40,000 people, there might be issues, but other than that, you don't. And that is...
Wait. You're talking about Denmark or about Germany?
I'm talking about all of the Nordic countries, and I'm talking about the UK.
Okay, and not about Germany, but not about Germany. Because forget about 5G, forget about 4G. The problem is that sometimes we even don't get 3G, although theoretically we do have it, but I get Edge and I get the worst internet or mobile internet on earth. I think we are on rank 50 worldwide or something like that.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I won't tell anyone because I always praise Germany for quality. And it's not, believe me, I've traveled all over the world, as you know, and there are many countries where you're lucky if you even get internet, right, on your mobile. So, but I want to say that I think there are two things we have to consider here. Sure, access speed is important. But even more important is, what can we get people to do if they interact with our email on a smartphone? What's realistic? Because people don't have the same behavior when they're on a smartphone as they do if they're on a desktop or even a tablet. So that means that the value of what's actually inside the email is much more important when people receive on a smartphone as opposed to desktop. Here's why. People are not as likely to spend a lot of time on the next page. So let's say they click on a link in the newsletter and go to another page. Because the experience, even if it is a responsive page, is not going to be as good as people have experienced it and been accustomed to with desktop.
Okay.
So for that reason, I think we have to differentiate. I think a great email marketer today is someone who has prepared content for the smartphone user and for the desktop user. Now, I know that that requires more resources, but on the other hand, if the upside is that you get much better traction, wouldn't you consider actually doing that work?
Yeah,
right?
but what's the difference between content? I mean, if it's engaging content, it's engaging content, no matter if I'm on the mobile or on a desktop.
Yes, but what we're seeing is that when clicks come from, pardon me, if we don't talk about offer, if we just talk about content, what we're seeing is that when clicks come from a smartphone to a web page, people spend a lot less time on that page than if they came from a desktop device. Make sense?
Okay, makes sense, absolutely.
And I think it's because still, till this day, I'm not talking about entrepreneurs who started their business in the past 1 year because they bought some theme that is already responsive. So it's somewhat optimized for that experience, but it's not mobile native. And I think that's where we need to get to, but that's a different discussion. So what I think, getting back to the smartphone, I think that if we provide more information inside the actual email, when people receive on a smartphone, we may get better results. Okay. I think we also need to have triggers where we can leverage data-driven marketing techniques. Let's imagine this. There's a story. It's a long story, a long article. Let's say that we actually include 10% of the full article inside the email newsletter received on a smartphone. We know if people have the waiting time that we talked about before, they're likely to read more inside the email when receiving on a smartphone than if they were on a desktop. Would you agree with that?
Okay. Yeah, sure, yeah. Sure, absolutely.
So, so why don't, but we also know it's complicated because people might have time and then suddenly they don't. So they go about their business and then 2 hours later they've forgotten all about the article that they started reading, which an article that they found interesting. So why not start implementing triggers inside emails for people who receive on a smartphone? Triggers that will allow me to click and say, remind me in 1 day about this article. Are you following me?
Oh, great. Okay.
That's data-driven marketing. So I experience this all the time. I may be sitting in an airport. I may be sitting, which doesn't really matter, watching my kid getting ready for a soccer game, whatever it may be, right? Okay. And I start doing something, but I can't complete it. So I would find it incredibly advantageous if a provider, a brand, gave me that opportunity. Click here, Michael, and we'll remind you of this article in a day or in 2 hours or whatever it may be.
So it's a great idea, because I just wanted to give you the next question, which is how do you make emails more conversion? How do you get more conversion from the email? And the answer you just gave me right now, don't want conversion right now, but give the people a chance to say, we want to, we need some time to decide, and then we want to convert. So it's a kind of engagement on the lower level. A reminder.
It is correct, and I believe in this concept that I came up with some years ago or maybe I didn't come up with it, but I'm using it in a different way, which I call no sex on the first date.
Yeah, that's right. Good. Hmm.
And as you know, because you heard me speak about this, and no sex on the first date really is a reminder to all of us that just because we happen to have an offer today doesn't mean that our audience is ready to buy. So we need to, whatever we do, whether it relates to content or offers, we need to plan for that dating process, and we need to realize that there's always a certain subset of people who are interested and in the market to buy today. But in most industries, that number is less than 3% of the total market. Okay. There's a statistic done that I used to present on this. Now, so the question is, really, how do we organize our content so that we have both what I call hard selling going on in an email and soft selling? So hard selling is, we have this offer, the price is this, buy now. The soft selling is answering all of the questions that people may have in order to be convinced, or that they need addressed in order to be convinced to buy.
Okay.
And so, yeah.
Isn't an email marketing, because we started this talk with click and open, isn't a click on a subject already saying, please remind me, I'm interested in this, so do we need a special reminder? Or isn't the click itself on a certain item, on a certain subject, isn't the click itself a hint that we might send a reminder later on?
Absolutely, and that's a very good point. And I would say both. I think if somebody does an active action, that definitely indicates a higher interest, and there's a higher degree of probability that that interest is actually there. But you're absolutely right. If we started leveraging, or let me speak English here, using the behavioral data that we collect, I mean, assuming that we're using an email marketing system of some sort, or a marketing automation system, or another system that can track what people do when they click and so on. Yes, then I agree. Then it is indicative if somebody clicks. It's not 100% certain that they're interested, but it is very indicative that they have some sort of interest in that particular topic. But Dr. Schwarz, as you well know, people are collecting data like maniacs. And that is in Germany, that is in Denmark, that is in Portugal. Wherever you go, brands are collecting data like there's no tomorrow. I ask myself this question: why? Because they're not using the data they collect to provide a better experience to the people they communicate to make the information in email newsletters and offers more relevant. Sure, we have a few brands who are doing this in a big way. And we know, I think we can count them on maybe two hands, right?
Okay.
And they're huge businesses with lots of resources. But by and large, today, an email marketer could actually improve performance very dramatically if only they started leveraging the behavioral data that they have collected.
Which data exactly, or the other way around, what in the field of data-driven marketing, what is the best strategies to get emails, to make emails more relevant using which data? How can you make emails more relevant with which data? What do you think?
Well, I think for starters, for someone who's currently just, let's say, sending email newsletters and email offers once in a while, I think it's a good idea to just look at some of the past behavior. The way you can work with that is that you take all of your pages on your website, and then you say these 10 pages or these 25 pages are indicative of real interest, right? And then you track the behavior to those pages. And then you start improving the targeting of your emails by sending based on what people have clicked on in the past, but only on those 25 pages. The reason I say a smaller number is because otherwise we can't manage it, right?
That's the
point.
You
need to have some, yeah, and especially if you're small, let's say you have 1 or 2 or 3 people in marketing. I mean, this is not a quick fix. So you do need somebody who can focus on this and make it happen in a good way. But obviously the other way to go about it, if one has a system that allows this, and there are plenty of systems that does this, is to use what we call lead scoring. So if you take lead scoring into account, you certainly get a different methodology, if you will, to understand who is interested in what, right? And that also means that people with a high score, which indicates that they have been very interested in the past, those are the people that you may send those hard-selling offers to. Whereas people with a low score, you know that they're not yet ready to think about your offer. If this makes sense.
Okay, so if I got you right, until now you have two strings of data. The one string is the 25 pages I'm tracking, so the quality of the what subject is this person interested, or what product is the person interested, and the second value I collect is how much is he involved, how much is he interested. So these two figures as a scoring. Did I get it right?
That's correct. And the third thing, but that's where it gets a little bit advanced, is when you start leveraging things like predictive analytics, and what we're going to see over the next 2 to 3 years, of course, is machine learning. And I think machine learning is going to be put on top of existing systems, right? So you can take your email marketing service providers, your marketing automation service providers, and so on. They will at some point in time offer that their systems are also based on machine learning. And when that happens, then you've got a wonderful scenario in terms of providing information at the right time to the right people, and in an automated fashion.
So you believe that we will see this, that an email service provider or a provider of a connected system with the online shop, with the whole tracking system, of a whole marketing suite, they can give us a system where we have automated offers which do fit the customer's needs.
Absolutely. I think that's what's going to happen. And if you look at the space now, there are a lot of companies developing these solutions. And you see people like Google, or companies like Google, I should say, are driving this forward. Just if anyone is an Android user, you can just look at your phone and go to Google today and see how Google every day learns a little bit more about you. And based on what they learn, they try to provide you with exactly the information you need when you need it. One good example is, so for example, when I'll be in Frankfurt in the beginning of May, where the DialogSummit takes place, it's very likely that at some point in time during the day, my phone knows when I'm supposed to leave for the airport, and it's going to tell me how long it's going to take me to get there, right?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Michael, to come to the end, is there anything you want to say which we did not say until now about data-driven marketing? Anything to add?
No, I think data-driven marketing, we've mostly talked about email marketing, and that's obviously a very good way to start. But I think there are a number of things that I should mention concerning fixing data-driven marketing issues. The first is to try to consolidate data as much as possible. So get data from your transactional or legacy systems such as ERP systems, combined with your contact database or your CM database data, as well as your behavioral data. And then make sure that you are able to profile your customers better. Maybe use what we call progressive profiling, which means that you ask customers 1 or 2 questions at a time. Instead of asking them 50 questions up front or 25, you ask 1 or 2 questions so that you gradually improve on the profile. The second thing is to use dynamic content. Now, the systems available are perfectly capable of handling dynamic content. And I think for email marketers in particular, that's very, very important. And all you need to leverage dynamic content is, I'd say, from 2,000 subscribers upwards. Then it makes sense.
Okay.
What that
already from 2,000, okay. Wow.
Yeah, in particular if you're in B2B.
Okay.
Right? Because in any B2B database, you will find decision makers, you will find influencers, and a lot of other different roles, right? You'll find techie people. If you're selling software, for example, there'll be technical people, but there'll also be users, et cetera, right? And each of those people have different needs. Each of those people are looking for different types of information.
Okay.
So yes, because essentially the only difference between a one-size-fits-all email and one that leverages dynamic content to improve the relevancy is content, right? That's all. The production of the newsletter and everything else is the same.
Okay.
Thirdly, I wanted to mention, Dr. Schwarz, that when it comes to data-driven marketing, it's extremely important to get skills on your team. People who are not afraid of data, people who understand data, who can analyze data, and who can come up with new activities based on the insight that they get. And I think it's important that these skills are attached to whoever is running marketing communication. I think it's a problem if marketing communication always has to go to another department, an IT department, to get help with data. I think marketing needs to take responsibility. They need to own customer data. They need to run the activities that improves on customer data. And if you don't have the skills today, it's perfectly all right to outsource that part or to insource resources for a period of time.
Okay.
And
Yep. I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, I think there's one more thing, which is about the automation part, which is very much a part of data-driven marketing. Is think about this no sex on the first date. Think about the fact that incubation time from people have a need until they make a decision is increasing every year. So now people take a lot longer. We know that on average people engage with 11 pieces of content before they come to a purchase decision. So that happens over a long period of time for most categories. So I think looking at how you can implement nurturing programs, look at from when you onboard a new subscriber, for example, or someone who's interested in what you have to offer, and then nurture them and use nudging techniques and so on is something I would recommend businesses to start looking at because it really works.
Okay.
Provided, of course, do a good job.
Okay, but then on different channels, not only email channels, but also on other channels as an addition.
Absolutely. I'm a multi-channel, it's called omni-channel now, I guess, advocate.
Yeah.
It's really not about email. It really is about what it would take to get the attention of someone. And some people don't respond to emails, but they might respond to a direct mail or to a telephone call or through an advertisement in another channel. Absolutely right.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. That was very interesting to learn from you. And very happy that you joined us here in this webinar. We are looking forward to your talk on DialogSummit on 3rd of May, where you are going to give a presentation on fixing your data-driven marketing, and I'm very curious about that. We will have the next webinar here on marketing-BÖRSE and on Email Marketing Forum with Kath Pei on 18th of April, and the next day on 19th of April we will have Della Quiz and also some questions. Thank you very much, Michael Leander. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.